Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ammons Bogus Hangout. I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves and go around in a circle. Kim, introduce yourself.
Hello, Kim Krausberg, accessibility consultant and usability consultant.
Zara.
Zara Altair, semantic writing for small businesses.
Terry.
Terry Van Horn. I exist.
Thomas.
Thomas Sickle, chemical engineer and founder of Blueprint Marketing.
And I'm Bill Slosky of SEO by the Sea, and I'm the SEO director of SEO research at Go Fish Digital. And thanks to Terry, who exists, we have a line of news in the SEO world today. A bunch of interesting things. I've heard this story before. Terry, search engines don't measure titles by pixels?
Yeah.
Why does that sound silly?
Well, first of all, pixels, they aren't a standard size. They change. One browser thinks it's one size, another. It's not, and it takes too many computations to figure that out. Whereas,
so I hear the term resolution often when it comes to images, and there are at least two different meanings of the term resolution.
Yeah, but the important thing is they use characters because most programming languages have built-in functions to get that information very quickly.
And the standards for things like HTML have character limits for different fields?
For some, yeah. But they're not hard values, and Google doesn't pay attention to some of them.
And last week, Google spokesperson said if you have two title tags or two meta descriptions, they might just combine them.
That makes sense to me.
Make for some interesting.
So we had a moderator at Creative Site Forums a number of years ago who was a poet, Ron, and he was in charge of a poetry forum, and he told us that all his poets used to write sonnets as meta descriptions, and include those as meta descriptions. And Google would pull out the lines from the sonnet that it thought were most appropriate to describe the content of the pages. They likely had the query term that person was searching for in those lines.
Yeah, I've never understood the thing with SEOs saying that you can't manipulate the description tag. If you have the phrase exactly in your description tag, most times they'll use your meta description.
Right. Now I've had people tell me they like the featured snippets that my pages sometimes end up with. They like how they're written, and I've always worked off the idea that if you include a phrase in your content that's likely going to be something someone searches for, make it be presented in a way that might make a good quote.
Yeah, it's well said.
You have to also consider that there's two things that another site will use when they're describing your site. They'll either use the domain name, or sometimes for the description of your site, they'll use the meta description. So the meta description is for that and getting people to click through.
If you're going to include a post in social media like a Twitter, it's often a good idea to include a quote in that post, something that fits the social media that people like repeating, that people want to share.
Yeah, or they correct your quote. Someone did that to me last week.
They corrected you.
Yeah, it was about how if your business model depended on featured snippets, you'd best rethink that. She said it's actually if Lincoln is 6'4" was the quote. I've heard
you
you
need a new
use
business
that other
model.
one too. That
Yeah.
if featured snippets are your business model, then you probably want to rethink it.
Yeah. If it's that easy to take off your page, you're not really selling that information to anybody. It's not really all that useful.
Right. My argument was always those pages converted so badly. Why were you so anxious to have the traffic anyhow?
Right. I mean, there was a actual service called What's My IP that you would find the site for, and it would tell you what your IP address was with your browser. And all of a sudden Google said, we can do that too.
Yeah. Because it's in the data that they collect. One other thing that I thought was I read this morning was that a lot of the data that people seem to think Google takes off of websites, like when they do a USD to CAD conversion for money, right?
Yeah.
People think they take that off other people's sites. They actually pay companies to write that for them. So, that's what there's this one guy on Twitter that is such can't find, if he says anything about Google, it's always really negative. And,
There are a few people like that. Like they have a grudge
I
or
never
something.
understood it. That's like a dog biting the hand that feeds it.
Yeah. Some people view controversy as the way of getting attention.
Well, first of all, you have to agree that the traffic isn't Google's to do whatever it wants with it. This person was saying that, featured snippets steal traffic from sites. Well, no, it doesn't. It's Google's site. They can do whatever they want for those people. They don't owe us or website owners anything.
Right.
It's very true.
It's a symbiotic relationship.
Yes, right. But some people take they're stealing our content. No, if I don't want my stuff indexed, I'll just put up a robots text or no index it. It's that simple.
They're listing your website.
Right.
They're not stealing anything.
To me, you're opting in when you don't block them with a robots text. That's
exactly. It's Googlebot disallow if you don't want them there.
Well, I did live in Delaware, and at one point in time, I looked up Street View of my house, and my neighbors were on the patio drinking beers. And I told my neighbors that I saw them on my computer.
You could make out their face.
They're in front of the house drinking beers. They weren't too pleased.
I've heard a number of occurrences like that where people will be walking in from their house or something like that, or the neighbor will be doing something, bringing in the trash, and they'll be recognizable.
So I printed out the robots.txt tag to block Googlebot and put it on my front door. I didn't keep it too long.
That would be funny for it to be.
It was a disallow slash.
This allow / truck with the cameras. Yeah, no, I imagine that you can contact Google if you don't want to be shown in those. I don't know how they would respond. I've never been in that situation.
You use the removal tool. If you
For
don't
Street
want
View?
a page in there. Oh, for Street View? No idea.
I
So
think some
Terry-
politicians' homes, I read an article, I think you can remove, at least you can block them out that way, but it might be that you have to be a politician.
So
or have a
Terry,
good reason.
Terry, you shared with this SEO Roundtable article with Google saying it's a bad idea to make your images low quality to improve core web vital scores.
Some of these questions that get asked, I have to laugh. Like,
So we have graphic designers who have been making images for blog posts, featured snippets, and so on, and they're huge.
yeah,
They're like 4 or 5 times the size they should be.
Twitter cards too. If you choose a large one, the picture's like 1,600.
Well,
I think.
Well, Google is saying to make images large, but they're not saying to make them that large. So people are making like images that are 4,000 pixels wide.
Okay, that's not.
That's never going to be practical unless you have a 50-inch, very high resolution monitor. 8K
Actually,
or
the
something.
only image size that I've seen Google actually put a number on is for logo. It's got to have us either be 600 wide or 60 high.
For AMP, right?
For AMP and to pass Google schema as well.
That makes sense.
They issued resolution sizes for to be included in Google Discover that were actually much larger than I expected. They're like 1,000 pixels wide.
It seems pretty large. I mean, 1,000 pixels wide on a blog post for maybe the background of the header or something. You know, type it could look nice. Most of the time, it probably won't. Who knows? But you know, it depends on
right. You're making the image actually smaller on your web page by limiting in size with HTML.
Yeah.
Right.
Plus, like Webp is something I hope everyone's using today for images when they can.
SVG is what.
Yeah, SVG is ideal, but Webp seems to have the ability to for all the main images as well. SVG, I agree, is the best.
Yeah, one of those formats not every browser supports.
Right.
Right. It's usually
What's the point of using an image that some browsers don't support? Because
it's usually a host.
Sorry,
it's usually a host giving you that option, presented that way.
Yeah, or a plugin in some cases on WordPress, or depending on what system.
Right. My host lets me show images that way.
Sprites?
WPE?
Oh,
Webp.
Okay, yeah. That's not supported by all web browsers, by the way.
Right.
Right.
Just Microsoft Explorer right now. I think Safari is joined, and Firefox is on there, and I believe Edge is on there. I can't be sure on that though.
I'm seeing it show up in the accessibility world more and more. So
Google suggests it to speed up your pages.
And is WordPress going to get rid of Internet Explorer 12?
No.
They better not. I wouldn't be able to use it.
I think they're talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a Microsoft version of Webp though. Kim would probably know the name of it more than I would. JPEG 2000 or something like that. I can look it up. But it's very rarely. I've never seen it implemented in the wild. But it'll actually, on certain browsers that WebP doesn't work on, it'll work. And Cloud Ordinary is the only time I've ever seen it where it's actually hosted through the CDN that way, or the website, I should say.
The WPE is also made on another site, correct? You can't like actually edit one of those. You have to make it and then go and put it through that procedure. Is that correct?
The plugin or the reverse proxy builds it off of the PNG or JPEG that you have already.
Oh, so it compresses it.
Yeah, just if the browser can serve it, it serves it in that format.
Right? Like it's not a real different format. It's actually just a form of compression, isn't it?
Well, it's a different format. Technically, it's a different file structure, but it's much smaller. Like you could have up to let's say a 500 kilobyte JPEG, or PNG, you could turn into a maybe under 50, or I'd say under 50 kilobyte WebP,
Okay,
and have the same resolution.
Is that after you've optimized the JPEG the regular way?
The smaller the JPEG, I'm sure the smaller the WebP is going to be as well.
I would think you can only shrink it so far.
Right, it's going to reflect the resolution of the master image. So, like, if you have
what I read was you had to go to a different site to actually make them.
In some cases, like Cloudflare allows you to do it automatically.
Okay, but that's like having another site, right? It's a network. So
it's a reverse proxy.
So what I'm saying is it's not an image format that I can edit right on my editor. Which is kind of convenient when you're building websites.
But it is a batch process.
Yeah.
So once you edit your images, then it'll be served to the public as a web.
I'd like to see the difference between it and the optimization I use now. That's what I'd be interested in.
I have worked on sites where all the images were way too big, and having a batch process to reduce those in size was helpful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The site I use right now reduces by 60 to 70% of paint without any degradation of the image.
If you use something like Photoshop as an image editor, it's got to save as web page version or
save for web.
Choice.
The name of the site I use, it's really good.
I think there are quite a few. I like Short Pixel is pretty good right now. That's actually an image editor or image reducer that actually lets you serve WebP. Imagify. There's quite a few good ones.
I use an old Corel program that reduces JPEGs in size.
Yeah, I use a site called Image Compressor.
It's an old software, but it works. JPEGs haven't changed that much.
Yeah, I used to have Photoshop with the filter. It kind of grew out of my price range, if you know what I mean. I use something called Paint.net now that's just as good as Photoshop.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Webspeedtest.org has a tool that will allow you to see all your images compared to their own hosted images of the best file format and compression possible, and it does a pretty good job of showing exactly what it could be. But I agree. I've seen some sites match almost perfectly where it's just a couple kilobits, nothing that you'd actually make a difference between WebP and PNG, which amazed me.
Yeah, when the report I saw by Google said the difference between my image and the ones they had was from WPE, the difference was not even worth the trip over to do it. It was that small.
You could have used them, but you would have only saved 3 bytes.
Pardon me?
That's not.
You could have used them, but you would have only saved 3 bytes.
No, I was going to save 3 bytes by changing it to a WPE.
Yeah.
So I said, what's the point in that? If that's a different file format that I can't edit.
It's not worth the effort.
That's right. So optimize the image properly, and you probably don't need that.
Well, I've seen some sites, especially some big e-commerce sites, where the product photos are huge and things like that, where people want to zoom in and maybe look at the integrate, like look at something very closely, where they'll have to serve a big image in some cases. And Webp is a blessing.
I've also seen 100 pixel by 100 pixel profile images that were 16 megabytes.
It works, but not very well.
Right.
Yeah, that's what kills me in a lot of the WordPress themes. They take that same picture and just change the width and height on it. Doesn't actually reduce the download time.
Right.
Still downloading the big picture. It's just smaller.
Mhm.
But that's a plugin that does that? Terry?
That shrinks it.
No, that's the responsive.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I have a question about something that I read about Googlebot.
Yeah.
The headline, it's a Search Engine Journal article, and the article says Googlebot doesn't click on buttons, what to use instead.
If you have a JavaScript that has an unclick option, so you choose you choose something and you have an unclick tag next to it, that means that causes something to change because of JavaScript. Googlebot doesn't click, so Googlebot's not going to click that thing to make that change, that transformation.
Okay.
It's one of the options. It's like I had to work with the website that dealt people information about weather. And for it to work correctly, you had to enter the zip code of the place you wanted the weather at. And the search engine isn't going to know all those zip codes. So it isn't going to index a page like that. It's when you're trying to use JavaScript to collect information from a database.
Right.
Because
No.
the way I read it was, I looked at the headline and I thought to myself, somebody's just going to read the headline. And they're going to say, oh,
Get rid of buttons.
okay, I can't use buttons on my website. And I'm like, what? So I almost wrote a rebuttal and I'm like, I don't have time. And I'm like, Googlebot isn't buying shit for you. You know, so yeah. But yeah, I was trying to understand.
One of the strange things that it does do, though, is if you have a drop-down menu on search and that links to a result, they'll follow it.
Googlebot will.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's HTML, it's better, but Java, they'll follow too. Yeah.
No,
They're getting very good
the
at
fact
Java.
that the parameter is in the value from the form.
Yep. Yeah, they follow parameters.
And if you're using get, that actually puts the full URL into the browser or in the response, including the words that were used to trick the search. So that's how
That makes
they
sense.
do the forms.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
But it's not that Google couldn't click the buttons, because a friend of mine has let's say he has a bot that can click buttons and fills out lots of forms. It can even defeat CAPTCHA, which is why I quit using them.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I see this stuff and I'm like, wait a minute. All these things jump into my head. Like, we recommend using buttons because it increases the conversion rate. So wait, you just said don't use them for what? And this is where my brain goes. And so, you know.
But if you're smart, you have a button and you use it as the background. This is a really old trick. You use the button as the background and put the link on top of it. Looks like they're clicking a button, but they're actually clicking the link on top of it.
Yeah, as long as the code in there says button, because the screen readers need to know that. They will announce button. If it's not there, then they don't have that information. So this is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not going to know what they're clicking, or if it even shows up at all.
I can tell you this. There's going to be a lot of sites on the internet that are going to fail the accessibility test on the CW.
Oh, yeah.
Because it looks at forms, and if you aren't using labels and the area and all that stuff, she no passy.
Yep.
You got to at least use labels to pass the CWV.
Yep. Yeah, it's really funny how many forms don't have labels. Every audit I do, that comes up. Every
I
single
was
one.
going to say about 90% probably don't have labels, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. And
Any form made 3 years ago probably doesn't have labels for sure.
Right.
Even today, I think people, it depends on maybe if the form software does it itself, they'll put labels in. But I don't, it's surprising.
Yeah, but even some of in fact, I think I fail most forms that are plugins, like third-party forms. They're missing labels. Even the most popular ones. And so there's a long way to go.
Even if you have to put a name beside the field, they still don't use a label on most of the plugins.
Right. Yeah, and of course you can't, it's really hard to edit something that's third party. You can't get into the code usually. So it's
You have to write an email and ask.
Get a load of this. I actually found a plugin that was changing the viewport so you could not enlarge or do anything to the layout.
You're kidding.
So you can use the Zoom and stuff on a phone. It'd shut that off.
Wow.
And set it to 1.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And people don't know, that you can't do that.
I can't even read that. I would have to get out my magnifying glass to read it.
Yeah.
What was the theoretical purpose of the plugin? What was it supposed to be?
And get a load of this. It was for a pricing table, which really blew my mind. I had to turn off every plugin on the site to figure out which one was breaking it.
And they probably didn't want to flip it horizontal, landscape versus portrait.
Who knows why? Because of their design. If you zoomed in, it would break the designs, the smithereens. So that's why they did it. And that plugin was on every page on the site, even though it's only actually used on 1.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't, as I look closer at the theme development and plugin development world, I always thought it was WordPress. No, it's the theme developers and the plugin developers that most of them, I'm convinced they don't have a clue how things work.
No, they don't.
There's a great plugin called Performance Matters, and it basically allows you to go in and look at the page by page. And if there's not a form on it and it's trying to throw the form URLs, the Java and the CSS, you can turn that off. You can turn it off page by page, which I thought was very helpful.
Well, there's another way. You put a script in your child web that says, all these scripts, move them below the body tag.
Yeah, what was that the site you mentioned, Tom?
Performance Matters.
Okay.
Brian Jackson is the plugin author.
Yeah, there's also code that will remove all the scripts in the head and move them to the body or down to where they belong, just above the body tag.
But to get rid of the calls entirely will speed up the site, and will if you don't need like that form or whatever the plugin that's calling the JavaScript or CSS on to be called on every single page, this thing will just go in and you can turn off the script. You can see like a little thing, turn off script on this page or turn it off site wide, or it's pretty helpful.
Yeah.
And I never
in
see
that case, I would just remove the script and not bother to rewrite it in the footer, because you have to remove it from one place and then another basically rule moves it down to the below just above the HTML body tag.
I never see that mentioned anymore. Like people don't talk about moving the scripts down. And I thought
you know why? Because you know how hard that is to do in WordPress? It's not easy. You can't even do that with you can do it with a child theme, but you have to know the code that I just mentioned that will remove it from one place, and you can basically move it wherever you want on the page.
I gotcha.
Yeah. You can also, you can use WP Rocket as well as a good plugin. That plugin I mentioned as well, Performance Matters is another one that allows you to say push all JavaScript to the bottom. Do you want to force it, or do you want to allow it to? So sometimes if you force it, you might break the site, but you can then exclude the certain ones that are causing issues.
WP Rocket also minifies all the CSS, JSS, and where it can, it tries to merge all the CSS into one file instead of having multiple.
Yeah,
it's very
Cloudflare.
good. If I were using a caching program, that's what I would use.
Yeah, I use it with even the caching off, because it does all the critical path with CSS and things like that. It does so well. I found it to be a really useful plugin. But there's like Cloudflare and Fastly can also segment the scripts so that they're all on the top and the CSS is at the top and JavaScript at the bottom, and you can make rules for each one, which I think is really useful.
Cool.
Anything to...
I was just going to say, Bill blew up the web with his last article on the Semantic Web.
Oh, yeah.
God. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, well done. It was well written.
So I went back through previous posts I had written about Semantic Web type stuff, and I combined it all together, or I combined a lot of it together. So I've been reading too many articles from people saying the Semantic Web is add LSI keywords. No, it's not. You don't mention knowledge graph. You don't mention schema.
Yeah.
You say don't use long tail keywords. No, that has nothing to do with Semantic Web. So I get disappointed seeing which sites ranked highly for semantic SEO, because some of them are nonsense.
Yep, most of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like so many things have been happening for the last 20 years that you're completely unaware of, and you're throwing copywriting tricks at the web and saying it's semantic SEO.
Yeah, that is happening a lot.
I see requests for SEO writers, copywriters and stuff. And the stuff they want is like 10 years old, It's like, how can you call yourself SEO practitioner. Actually, the other day, somebody sent me something as, this is an example of the kind of thing we think would be good. And I wrote it, and it was what did they call that? Spin a spun
spinning articles.
Yeah, it was a spun article.
Spun
All
content.
the words were like off. Do you know what I mean? In those spun articles, and so it didn't really make a lot of sense. And I wrote back to her and I said, this isn't really a very good example of this. And then here's the killer. She said, well, this is what our head SEO person sent as a good example. And I was just like,
Wow.
you've got to be effing kidding me.
Black Hat SEOs were using spin writing articles 15 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
It was out of favor even.
At some point, Google said, this is gibberish. We're not going to rank
It
these
is
for anything."
gibberish. It is gibberish. And so when she wrote back that their head SEO person had recommended this article, I was like, whoa, never mind.
As something as like a template to write as similar to? Wow.
I don't know, but
Well, I'd be suspect of anyone who even
fun
gave
articles
you a
are so
template.
easy to identify, and I can't believe anybody is even thinking about them at all. Do you know what I mean? Because they are gibberish. That's the right word. And that was just earlier this week. So, there was their head of SEO. Bless them. Recommending this article as an
A
example.
lot of times the head of SEO is just the guy they're blaming this week.
Oh my God.
Sometimes true, yeah.
You people have a long way to go.
Well, you can't really blame them because no one really knows how to hire an SEO. Very few people do.
Yeah, I guess that's true, Terry.
That's the thing.
SEO
People actually
person
think,
had
you know.
totally hornswoggled them into this stuff.
So the Peter principle is in action on the web. People get promoted to the point of their incompetence.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
Or incompetence gets promoted because that's the best they have.
So you end up with people in charge of SEO who are hired by people who have no idea what they should be looking for.
Right, exactly.
Well, if you look at a lot of the jobs that are out there, most of them don't really know what an SEO does.
Right.
They think he does web design and some other stuff.
I have no need for an expertise in Photoshop or PPC.
That's right. Or JavaScript. Understanding that it's hard to index is about all you need to know. Don't use it. In fact, that's what you need to know. Don't use it if you can. So it does help to know what your alternatives are, right? It helps there, but it's not a prerequisite. Understanding how a search engine works would help a lot more.
Right. I've had people looking for folks to do SEO on charity websites. And they were absolutely looking for expertise with certain tools that are used on charity websites. And I told them, hey, look, if an SEO doesn't understand some basic concepts of how SEO works on a search engine, the stuff with the charity websites don't matter.
Yeah. You gotta crawl before you can walk.
Oh, you can learn the other stuff easy enough. Knowing how a search engine works, that's a little different.
Yeah.
That's not on. You can't go to Google and search for the algorithm. You know what I mean? You can get the syntax for something.
You have companies like IBM making SEO software based on misstatements by Matt Cutts on 15-year-old videos.
Mm.
Yeah.
Where they're removing ampersands from URLs because of what Matt Cutts said in the video. Something's wrong with IBM.
Yeah.
I remember that too.
Because if they actually test it, I can't remember a time where ampersand was a problem for Google.
It was maybe 2002.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be if you had like more than 3 in a single URL. But if you got more than 3, you might want to rethink the program.
It's still not a problem now, but some sites were just really bad. Like you'd get a Sears URL that was maybe 1,000 characters long.
Okay.
All numbers and letters.
Yeah.
Well, I know they had issues with over 3 parameters.
It's like Sears. I understand why you're going out of business.
Yeah.
We got some comments.
Oh boy, do you?
Mm.
So I looking at the comments, I'm not sure I agree that people in SEO who are becoming experts are becoming black hat experts, because there are too many things that people fail at when it comes to things like schema, which has nothing to do with black hat SEO.
Right.
There are other things that developing some expertise in would make you better SEO. See a lot of people talking about machine learning.
I don't get that either, Bill.
I'm writing a blog post. It'll be out within a day or two that talks about the differences between machine learning and information retrieval scoring. And there is a difference.
Mm.
And it's like there are sources of information for that. You just have to have some idea where to dig to find them. And you don't need to be a black hat. You don't need to go to like the Warrior Forum or some other forum where they're arguing over the perfect keyword density for different niches. That's never going to give you expertise in anything.
Yeah,
And
I agree. I think
I've seen those arguments. I laughed my head off and left.
Well, a lot of times when you see how much time they spend automating and doing all this work, if they just did it right and slow, they'd expend the same amount of energy and it'd be sustainable.
Right. People get disgusted when I say that Google tends to be one of the best SEO tools available because you can learn so much from it. They said, but I want it done right now. I said, find another job, one you might be good at. Do that.
Burgers fry in about 2-3 minutes. There's your next occupation. Get your spatula skills down.
How much of SEO is digital marketing nowadays?
Somebody failed at SEO and they couldn't rank for it, so they tried to rank for digital marketing. So anybody who's sucked at SEO who ranked for digital marketing will tell you that digital marketing is more important than SEO because they can't rank for
SEO than
digital marketing is basically what we used to call content strategy.
Because I'm noticing the term is getting used more and more, and then I ended up using it more and more because I thought it was a catch-all. And now I'm not.
It sort of is.
It is in some ways because a digital marketer is probably doing SEO and PPC and social. He's doing everything. That's like a full service agent.
Oh, wow.
So the agency I work for does creative content campaigns, which means we work with clients to attract traffic to their pages.
Right.
We don't necessarily target the words that describe their services or goods. We target the audiences that look for those services or goods to get those people to come to those pages.
The best SEOs, in my opinion, target audiences, not keywords.
Yep.
So SEOs who are bragging about how good they are at SEO, who never use the word audience, need to stay clear of them. They don't have any idea what they're talking about. They may tell you how to rank pages best for RankBrain, but they've got to rank brain themselves.
They're usually link builders who think that's SEO.
That sounds like another article worth writing.
Here are copywriting tricks to keep people on pages longer and reduce bounce rates, because that's how you get RankBrain to like your page and get people to go to your page based on RankBrain.
Oh, God.
So
or you need 1,200 words on the page, or you can't rank anymore.
That's the lane brain algorithm.
My favorite quote on RankBrain is from Omi Sito. What should I do about RankBrain? Nothing.
Apply to LSI.
I think a lot of people who call themselves SEO like to bandy terms around so they sound informed, you know. But
I love it. I love it when they do, because once they start doing that, I can ignore them completely.
yes, right, exactly. You know, like yeah. That's why I'm here every week. No, you know, I there's a local SEO meetup, you know, in the Portland area.
Yeah.
And when we went to online stuff because of social distancing, I went and stayed about 6 minutes to their meetup. You know, and it was the same, banding all these terms around. And then they were like, well, who are you? How do we know that you know anything? And da da da. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're asking me the wrong questions. So see ya. Bye. You know, I mean, so I have trouble with, well, I have trouble with this in general, but also in SEO, is that people who label themselves and then don't match up to their labels, as it were.
Yeah.
So like Terry had a couple of comments about somebody in our notes today, and
I really haven't laughed as much as I laughed when I saw the article on how to be an SEO expert.
Yeah.
And I remembered at the forum we used to run, Create a Site, where the people who usually knew the least about SEO would give themselves a name SEO expert.
Right. It is an expert is like one of those red flag words.
Yeah.
It's either an SEO expert or an SEO ninja.
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah,
what happened to all
ninja's
the gurus?
Sorry,
That's why we have the
Gandhi
SEO
couldn't
Hall
make it
of
this
Shame.
week.
Remember that, Bill? We had the SEO Hall of Shame. And because we were so fed up. So whenever one of us got some stupid promotional thing from an SEO that really had no clue, we just threw them on the forums and said, here's the dummy.
My favorites were the SEO tag teamers.
Mm.
You'd get somebody post something to the forum that was a stupid question.
Oh yeah.
And 2 minutes later, somebody would show up we've never seen before either. And they would supply an answer. And if you took the question and answer and did searches for them on the web, you would find the previous 57 forums they had posted to.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you could delete both of them, so you get 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we actually did. We have that in the house rules at one point. Like, don't do this. You know what you're up to, toodaloo.
So we may have had that in the rules, but that's okay. Those people didn't read anyway.
No, that's true.
A lot of the asshats, I remember that called out on the.
So how do I apply LSI keywords?
Oh, God, yeah. Are people still doing that? I mean, they're still writing about that?
There are companies devoted to it.
Write about the same thing over and over again. The update that came out from Google last week, did that affect my site? I've lost all my traffic. The proper answer was probably.
Yeah. We lost Terry.
Without looking,
So we would get people who lose all their traffic to updates, but it's like, have you done all the other things you should do to look at your site to see if it's working correctly? Like, see if there's a problem with the server, see if you have a competitor who actually hired an SEO who knows what they're doing. Have people stop searching for your keywords? Have you done keyword research within the past 10 years?
I've seen things where things will drastically happen to someone's industry and they won't even understand that that's happened. And all of a sudden the traffic will just...
I've seen people using keywords where if you search for the keywords in Google Trends, you would see that searchers' interest was gone for those keywords 5 years ago. Nobody searches for them anymore. It's a shame that it happens, but it does.
Yeah, I'd say that's one of the more common things, is that just vernacular, as well as just things are becoming obsolete, that they're actually talking about no longer. It's like if I wrote about best DVDs to rent at Blockbuster, it wouldn't really be the most popular piece of content anymore. I changed it over to Netflix. It might be the best things to watch on Netflix. It might get a little bit more.
So I remember when Blockbuster went from VHS tapes to DVD tapes, and they were still sticking the stickers on the discs. Please be kind. Please rewind. And I told the guy, you don't need those stickers anymore. They're not going to rewind the compact disc.
Right.
They had them on the discs?
They had stickers left over from the VHS tapes.
Oh, so they put them on the disc? Oh, I missed that.
At the Blockbuster I went to, they were. Yeah.
Apparently, a lot of Blockbuster's revenue was from rewind fees and late fees primarily. But yeah.
So just as an aside, turntables are making a comeback, and so we're real LPs. Yes.
But they're scratching now.
Yeah.
They're making USB turntables.
Really?
Really?
Oh, jeez.
I was in the store the other day and saw a turntable for $12,000. I was just like, who buys these? And they're like, you'd be surprised, they sell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting our Pioneer turntable rehabbed. It needs a new belt, but I mean that thing was a beauty. And I'm like, you know what? I still have my albums. They're making a comeback. I'm getting my turntable back.
People used to spend a lot of money on stereo equipment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, and
Oh,
especially at the very beginning, like 1959, 1960. You know, the people spent a lot of money on stereo equipment.
And I have a friend whose father bought classical music, but only remastered vinyl.
Mm.
You know, for his
I've heard
multiple $1,000
Yeah.
audio equipment.
All right.
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of people argue that vinyl is the pinnacle of all. But I
I've
say
heard
8-track. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. No,
I've heard
I mean-
people complain about CDs and say the audio quality wasn't comparable. But then again,
my ears
I've
must
heard
not be
I've
that
heard
good.
I've heard old blues albums on vinyl that were much more improved on CD.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I've listened to vinyl and CD, and my ears must not be as good as other people's because I could tell the difference from vinyl with the pops every once in a while, but that's the only way. I can't really tell otherwise. But some people, I mean, if they swear by it, I guess it's their preference.
You just need a big speaker and amplifier.
So the audio quality on an old Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee album isn't that good, at
No,
least on vinyl.
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, worth listening. No. I love
That would
the
worth money.
Brownie McGee. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. There aren't a lot of people buying big speakers anymore. Less and less you see them in the stores. And
Oh yeah.
Are there audio stores these days, like
Oh,
Crazy Eddie's in New Jersey?
Not like
Crazy
the old
Eddie's
days,
a little
but they
different.
still exist.
Yeah, you can go to Marantz and Best Buy. They still Macintosh, which I was surprised to see them selling, and like some pretty good brands. B&K, Bang Olufsen. Bang Olufsen's kind of, I don't know, not my cup of tea, but BK, Vienna speakers and all that stuff.
We've been having Fry's closed down here in California. So Best Buy sells stereo equipment.
Yeah, in the back they have a Marantz. They sell like pretty cheap stereo equipment in Best Buy, but then in the back they'll have a store called Marantz, which is a high-end store that they purchased and then put into their Best Buy centers. So it'll be just higher end stuff in the back.
They used to sell original equipment, manufacture computer parts at Best Buy.
Yeah.
They reduced the amount of those.
Yep. Yeah, you could go and CompUSA used to. I think they're out of business now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could get everything.
I think Radio Shack is out of business too.
And they were the place that we all
Not
went
in
to.
Canada.
Not in Canada?
Yep, there's still a few here.
Radio Shack still in Canada?
It's the price of building a PC. Or you can still, I guess Amazon just took them all down. I'm assuming. You gotta build a computer. It was nice being able to look at the cases and everything right up front.
Yeah.
Used to be computer conferences at universities where you could go and buy lots of equipment and build computers, get stuff directly from the original equipment manufacturers, and put together pieces that worked out really nice.
Yeah, when I first started, all my equipment was cloned, built from parts by a friend. Much cheaper and faster and better than anything you could buy in a store. No, seriously.
I agree. I had a couple friends who taught me how to do that.
Yeah. Oh,
And I
my
was
brother
making-
did it with them as well.
I was making some nice stuff.
Yeah, they were overclocking them too.
Liquid cooling and all that stuff.
Extra fan.
Who builds stuff? My dad built my stereo for me when I was 16 years old.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, back then they were probably all tubes.
What was that?
Back then it wasn't solid state; it'd be tubes and all that stuff.
He built TVs. He did. Yeah, he was. Well, he still is. He's still, even in his retirement, he still takes pieces of things and builds things. He built he took apart a calculator and built a light meter for cameras out of the pieces.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't get any of his mathematical brain at all. I'm the daughter of a genius, and it just like skipped right by me. That's why I sit next to Bill Slawski at conferences. So seriously, he's like, what did he just say? And what does it mean?
What do you guys think of the don't reblock pages after you allow them to crawl to see no index tags? It kind of sums it all up. Title, but
If you reblock the pages, Google can't tell that you've got no index on it.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
how often should Google check to see whether or not you have a robots.txt file on your site? Before it
Exactly.
visits every page?
Absolutely. Yeah. Many times a day, or depending on how popular the site is.
So they usually only visit robots.txt file maybe once a day, if that often, because they figure it hasn't changed.
It'll
But
probably
good.
still be in the results too. It'll just say, sorry, we don't have a description because they wouldn't let us index the page.
I tried that, linking to a robots.txt file to try to get it into the results, and I could never do it. But I would love to see it work. But I think Google just disconcludes as it figures out what it is.
So Google usually, first time it visits a site, will ask for robots.txt because they don't get caught indexing a site that they're not supposed to be on.
Yeah, I think every trip, first thing they do is ask for robot text.
But but then they wait. They give it a day or so. They catch it.
Oh, okay.
Because if you have like a multi-million page site, you don't want to check robots.txt multiple millions of times.
No, I mean, like if they were doing a whole bunch of pages on a site, they'd check it once, see where they couldn't go, follow the links, and leave. That would be just doubling the number of requests if you ask for the robots on every request.
And that's why it was easier to implement XML sitemaps, because they wouldn't have to follow all the links to all the pages. They just download the XML sheets.
And it's important to get all those 301s out
Oh,
of
and then they
XMLs
use the
and 404.
XML to be cute, to be indexed later.
Yeah. So it's an old Jeff Dean patent that talked about crawling websites, and I'm still trying to figure out why it said Google will see a 302 and visit the page that's 302ing to index it. It sees a 301, it'll put that on a list and wait a week before it indexes it. I'm trying to figure out why it treats 301s and 302s differently like that.
Because one is permanent and one is temporary.
So the temporary one they visit immediately, the permanent one they wait a week?
In case that URL is only like that for a little while, they want to change it right away.
But you're saying they visit the temporary immediately and not, or just to see if it's changed more often?
They don't explain why they visit one immediately and the other a week later.
Mm.
But you know the way Google is, if something is permanent, they want to make sure it's permanent, so they leave it for a week. Or
So,
maybe
yeah.
it's not in such a rush to index that if they know it's permanent, it's not going to change. Whereas temporary, it needs to be updated immediately.
So Yahoo used to explain things they were doing in their patents. So they'd say, okay, when we crawl web pages, we'll crawl the same page and then crawl it again 2 minutes later. And if it's got URLs that were on it the first time that changed to something else the second time, we'll consider those URLs transient. They're probably linking to advertisements or something like that. And we won't index those at all. That made sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And we're at the top of the hour, a little bit past it. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and have a good week. Take care now. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.